What are your slogans for today?
My slogans for today come from the most iconic film in a century, Mean Girls,
Naturally.
naturally. It fits today's episode because we've got Do Not Trust Her from the famous Burn book. And then we've also got You Can't Sit With Us because even plastics can be exclusionary to other plastics.
It's not our fault you're so obsessed with us.
Leave me alone. I'm almost too gay to function. Hello there. I'm Sister Babushka.
I'm Sister Alaska Lott.
And this is Utter Nonsense.
This is the show where we pour a cup of tea.
And we utter whatever nonsense pops into our heads.
This is basically a laid-back chat between friends, just spilling the tea all over the place.
And a new episode is uploaded once a month at the start of the month, every month. So you should make sure that you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the piping hot tea.
And remember that this is also available as a podcast. So if you'd rather listen to us while you're on the go, you can find us on all of your favourite podcasting sites. Tell you what, this space is actually very weird to look at.
It is taking some getting used to. So what was the inspiration then?
It started off with, I want to be plastic. And I thought, maybe I could do white shiny bits to make it look like plastic. And then I remembered that my face is white. So I need a different plan. I'm like, okay, well, what's plastic? What says plastic? Dolls. And then I discovered Bratz dolls.
Successor to Barbie, the Bratz doll.
Yes, that's what I'm going to do. We are here today to talk about gatekeeping. Gatekeeping from within the LGBTQ plus community, which of course is nothing new, and we have spoken about this before.
Yes, episode 16, called The Unspoken Problem in the Queer Community. Because as we've discussed before, from the moment there was a queer community, there were also people who thought that they should be the ones to decide who is and who isn't a part of it. And we're not just talking about those straight pride assholes.
We're talking about the gay men who tried to push lesbians out of the movement altogether. We're talking about shunning and dismissing the bi plus community from within. We're talking about transgender people being constantly and systematically pushed out from communities, and so much more.
It essentially says you only get to be in the community if you perform queer in the right way.
It reinforces heteronormative gender roles and expectations, and it takes safe spaces away from people who need them.
We wanted to name and shame some very prominent queer people who are doing dirty to other queer people.
That's right. This is the top 10 sinners of the LGBTQ+.
Time to call the fuckers out.
I just don't understand why you would spend your energy and time in life putting other people down and making their life harder. Like, life's too short for that. Go and enjoy your life and do nice things and be good to people.
It's like trying to rank turds. They're all turds at the end of the day. We are going to say this list is highly subjective.
And of course, this is a list of people who are queer doing it to other queer people. So it doesn't include people who don't identify as part of the LGBTQ+. So without further ado, let's go through our top 10. And I bet you can't guess who's at the top of this list. Let's see who's first on the naughty list. Straight in at number 10, we have the one, the only Ellen DeGeneres.
She's famous for coming out as gay, telling people to be kind, and being one of the meanest people in Hollywood.
It's well known at this point.
Ellen is basically acting as a gatekeeper of the Hollywood inner circle, including forgiving past transgressions against LGBTQ plus people, snubbing people she sees as being beneath her, and hanging out with her good friend and former president and anti-LGBTQ plus advocate, George W. Bush.
Ellen's mere presence in Hollywood has forever shifted how the entire world envisions queer people, similar to how RuPaul's presence has changed how people think about drag.
Her legacy is undeniable, even if her current actions seem antithetical to her once radical presence as a barrier-breaking queer artist. Ellen espouses taking a more community-based approach of getting everyone to the table, but that even includes when it can harm LGBTQ plus members of the community.
For example, when the Oscars fired host Kevin Hart, she invited him onto her show and attempted to convince him to take the gig, often intimating that she knew what was in his heart, and that even though he had joked about beating his queer son, of course he's not a homophobe.
DeGeneres has obviously operated as a Hollywood elite who emphasises decorum and playing nice to maintain the status quo in which she's found success.
Some people have encountered her not so nice sides. Cue trans beauty guru Nikki Tutorials, who has famously spoken out about how badly she was treated by Ellen when making a guest appearance on her show, which came right in the middle of revelations about the toxic work environment on the show in general and allegations of racial insensitivity, sexual harassment, and bullying.
On screen, Ellen has appeared interested and sympathetic, listening to Nikki talk about her experience of being blackmailed to come out publicly as trans. And at the end of the show, she even presented a check for $10,000 in her name to go to an LGBTQ plus charity. But off screen, it was a different matter. Nikki said that Ellen was cold and distant as soon as the cameras were turned off, and noted that she wasn't treated equally compared to the other guests that were there for the show. She was even banned from using the bathroom nearest her dressing room.
Almost every time people get upset about trans people, they start talking about bathrooms, don't they? And banning them from certain bathrooms. And I don't know how they didn't think that that would be a problem, that they wouldn't be read that way.
I don't understand.
What an awful way to treat a guest on your show. And to then play so nice on camera as well, as if there's nothing wrong. Apparently, she wouldn't even look people in the eye.
Like a wild animal, don't look into the eye.
There's a reason the Ellen show is no longer a thing. It's all we're saying.
What I've seen of the Ellen show, like, just generally a very uncomfortable show with really awkward behaviour to all guests.
Not kind, Ellen.
And yet, she is only the 10th person on this list.
Let's have a look. Who made it to number 9?
Coming in at number 9 for our gatekeeping queer people, we have Richard O'Brien. Now, if the name sounds familiar, it's probably because he is the creator of the infamous Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Rocky Horror Picture Show is iconic. I mean, it has cult status for a reason.
Which we will caveat that in and of itself does have a few issues.
I think it's probably a product of its time. So when you watch it now and you look at the language and you go, but I think that language has changed a lot over the years.
He was also the host of The Crystal Maze, which I fucking loved as a kid.
How could they possibly be a gatekeeper?
He has been open about his gender and how he views that, and talks about there being a continuum between male and female, also even saying that I believe myself probably to be about 70% male, 30% female.
Does he ascribe a label to himself? Because he sounds like he's potentially in kind of non-binary type territory.
He is just human, and his gender is in the continuum between male and female.
That's interesting in the context of some of the comments that he has made, though.
That bitch.
For example, there was some online controversy happening around a feminist author, Germaine Greer, who made some anti-trans comments. And I am just going to forewarn you that these comments are transphobic. I'm just going to read it verbatim. She wrote, "Just because you lop off your dick and then wear a dress doesn't make you a fucking woman." Charming. Richard, of course, decided to respond to this in support. Blows my mind. With the words, "I think I agree with that. I agree with Germaine Greer and Barry Humphries. You can't be a woman. You can be an idea of a woman. You're in the middle. There's nothing wrong with that. I certainly wouldn't have the wedding tackle taken off, but you aren't a woman.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show obviously introduces people to particular aspects of queerdom. And, one of the songs is Don't Dream It, Be It. And such an affirming song. And then to have comments from the very creator is definitely a challenge of, you have to almost start to separate the art from the artist. They did try and soften this with ideas that, I think of myself as a third sex and it makes things easier. We should all see ourselves as members of a sentient race of beings and be nice to each other.
I'm going to be honest, he seems confused. Like, he talks about being a third sex, but he doesn't understand the difference between sex and gender. He sounds like he knows that he doesn't fit in a heteronormative world, but doesn't understand what the other possibilities are, and maybe needs to do a bit more like introspection and learning. Follow that journey through.
Whether it's a clumsy interview or just failing to understand everything he's talking about.
Well, that was back in 2016, so has there been any improvement since then?
There does seem to be an understanding that life isn't easy for our trans siblings, and society is definitely structured in a way that makes it difficult. But yeah, it's a bit tricky when he's defending people that are actively attacking our community and still hasn't, publicly said, oh, those comments were out of place and I take them back.
In 2020, it kind of seems like he's doubled down on the comments he made previously. I could see it says, and again, we're quoting, "I think anybody who decides to take the huge step with the sex change deserves encouragement and a thumbs up. It's good to be like this, as long as they're happy and fulfilled." Again, it's nice. "I applaud them to my very last day." Excellent. But then it goes downhill. "But you can't ever become a natural woman." Natural woman. I think that's probably where Rowling is coming from. That's as far as I'm going to go, because people get upset if I have an opinion that doesn't line up with theirs.
The amount of times, though, that people will use, oh, well, I'm just stating my opinion, and I'm sorry if people are hurt.
I think it's dangerous to try and define what a woman is, because inevitably you're going to leave out people who have been assigned female at birth and still identify as female at birth, that you would consider a woman but doesn't meet your criteria. I think it's safe to say that Rocky Horror contributed greatly to discussion on gender and sexuality and is actually really valuable from that point of view. And it's just so sad that its creator has gone down this route and has earned themselves the number 9 spot on this list.
Definitely a disappointing spot. Maybe Richard can redeem himself with a bit more education and slowly work his way off this list.
But there are people still on our naughty list. Shall we see who's next?
Number 8.
Donnie McClurkin. He is an American gospel singer and minister with various awards that he's won, and he's sold over 10 million albums worldwide.
It's more than I've ever sold.
And he uses his position and his gigantic platform to push against the LGBTQ plus community and identifies as ex-gay.
Nobody ever says I'm ex-straight. Where's that?
Oh, that's how I'm going to identify him from now on.
So he's been going for a good 20 years now, as he's embarking on his gospel career, speaking to Christian news websites, stating that due to sex abuse and porn while he was growing up, he'd struggled with homosexuality.
I think we can all recognise that having experienced these kind of traumas growing up it's a really difficult thing, and different people deal with it in different ways. I'm not sure that becoming gay is how people deal with it.
It is unfortunate that he says that these were the reasons that he had turned gay, and that he was also able to reverse this through will and prayer.
This means that he has, of course, rejected what he calls a lifestyle. I feel like I'm going to be using air quotes a lot in this episode. He says, "I've been through this and have experienced God's power to change my lifestyle. I am delivered, and I know God can deliver others too." You can see where this is heading. He wants to now do this to other people.
It has led to a few issues, mainly for Donnie. He was listed to headline for Barack Obama for his 2008 presidential campaign. But picking Donnie as one of the headline performers was a bit of a controversy due to his views on homosexuality. So he was therefore removed from the performance.
In 2013, he was disinvited from the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom because his ex-gay status was seen as disruptive.
In 2015, he was very outspoken against marriage equality. In 2001, he gave an interview on TV and explained that he'd never had a long-term relationship. And it almost seemed as if he was blaming his sort of bisexuality, or ex-gay, or however he wants to define it at this time, had somehow impinged his ability to form relationships with women going forward. Donnie, it just seems like you're confused about your own sexuality.
Has he ever considered just talking to a woman? If you don't know what they want, maybe you could ask.
All these reasons, that is why Donnie has earned his spot in number 8 place on our list.
We've already managed to strain our air quote fingers. They just keep getting better and better. I wonder who's at number 7. Let's find out, shall we?
We have the fabulous, and I'm using that very sarcastically, Allison Bailey coming in at 7th place. She is a barrister specialising in criminal defence law and describes herself as a feminist, a lesbian, a lifelong campaigner for racial equality, lesbian, gay and bisexual rights.
Now, I feel like there's a letter missing in there. Oh, look at that. She's involved with an organisation that uses those same letters. They're rather notorious. It is, of course, the LGB Alliance.
One of the co-founders for the LGB Alliance, who proclaimed to be an advocacy group and registered charity at the moment in the UK, which is under discussion, which opposes LGBT registered charity Stonewall's policies on transgender issues.
When she announced the new group on Twitter, she said, "Gender extremism is about to meet its match." If that's not ominous, I don't know what is.
She takes great pride in describing herself as being very gender critical, meaning biological sex is real, important, and immutable, and is not to be conflated with gender identity, and that feminism should organise with emphasis on the basis of sex rather than gender.
It almost sounds like they're a charity explicitly set up to protest against equal rights for trans people, but they're actually anti-bisexual as well and have excluded bi people on a number of occasions.
However, this is not Alison's only issue with the queer community.
As if that wasn't enough.
No, Allison has her own vendetta she is waging quite happily. The Garden Court Chambers announced that it would be launching an internal investigation after it had received various complaints alleging potential transphobia over her social media use and her involvement in the LGB Alliance.
In retaliation, in March 2020, she announced that she was going to sue Garden Court and Stonewall in a discrimination action, which has gained a lot of media attention.
In her own words, "I also hope that it can stop Stonewall from policing free speech via its diversity champions scheme."
Imagine setting up an entire charity with the explicit aim of discriminating against a small minority of people, and then being surprised when you get into trouble for discriminating against people.
I imagine that Garden Court is signed up to the champion scheme that Stonewall has to make employers more LGBT-friendly places for employees to work. And somehow, because of her tweets and her setting up of LGB Alliance, she's found to be in breach in some way of what the Chambers wants in terms of diversity. So what did she expect? Allison had decided to use a crowd platform to raise money for her legal appeal, and then it got shut down because even the website it was being hosted on had said that parts of her case page, unconnected to the facts of the legal case, could be considered to promote hate, abuse, or harassment towards a minority community.
Quelle surprise!
The courts did see sense in the case that there wasn't any lost income or opportunities to be answered to, and so Garden Court Chambers won that one, and all of her claims around Stonewall were dismissed because Stonewall did not influence the complaints procedure or the policies of the Garden Court Chamber. But Allison ain't happy with that, and she's going to challenge this in an appeal because she really hates Stonewall.
She spends her life, her energy, her money, everything discriminating.
In the UK, Stonewall is basically a household name for supporting queer people here, and yet to have that attacked so viciously, it really makes you question what the overall aims are. As somebody who is also a lesbian and has probably benefited from the progress that Stonewall has helped usher in over the last several decades.
Well, she was absolutely delightful, but I'm sure our next person will be even more delightful again. Can't wait.
Just keeps getting better and better.
Coming in at number 6 on our list is another British personality, a Scottish politician. Her name is Joanna Cherry.
And for anyone listening who recognises the name Joanna Cherry, before we get into what you're probably thinking she's on the list for, there is another incident.
Dun, dun, dun.
In 2016, there was an incident where a comedy rap group performed at a pro-independence event. In an act of foul-mouthed rap of a sexual and predatory nature, they had even referred to Ruth Davidson, openly lesbian Scottish politician, as, an apology again for the language, Dykey D.
I'm sorry. I'm genuinely shocked.
Joanna had described the routine on Twitter as hilariously irreverent satire.
Wait, so she's cool with the anti-lesbian slurs?
There's no real justification for it. I mean, you may have political differences with somebody and you can disagree with someone, but to endorse other people, therefore using slurs to denounce that person and other people, it's not satire, it's very much punching down.
And that's before we get to the transphobia.
Price and about.
What most people will know Joanna Cherry for is, of course, her transphobia and her staunch opposition to the proposed reforms to the Gender Recognition Act in Scotland, which has long been debated and hard fought for, and is still proving to be just a complete nightmare for trans people. The proposed changes to the Act essentially would allow trans people to obtain a gender recognition certificate on the basis of a statutory declaration and wouldn't require the in-depth medical approval that's required at the moment.
She believes in the statement that women don't have penises. It is an undeniable biological fact. She would deny the accusations of transphobia that are rightly put to her, and instead states that she approaches the issue as a feminist and that there was a big dose of misogyny in debates over Gender Recognition Act reform.
A fair number of gender critical feminists, as they like to term themselves, who essentially are indulging in a fair bit of misogyny themselves and don't seem to realise it. Boiling women down to biological parts or biological functions and failing to recognise women that are assigned female at birth, it just don't fit. It just excludes so many women. And women are more than bodies. Like, I thought we'd move past that. For some reason, some feminists have not. And that feels very anti-feminist to me, just putting it out there.
As well as all this fun, Joanna is on our list because she's supported amendments, almost trying to make it okay to abuse trans people and not have that being seen as a protected characteristic. She has threatened to sue her own party's LGBTQ wing because they have not agreed with her positions.
Honestly, her list of transgressions against other LGBTQ plus people goes on and on and on.
I like transgressions as transgressions against trans.
It is safe to say that she has well and truly earned her place on this list.
So as you can see, as we get higher on this list, the degree of assholery just continues to increase.
And we're only halfway through, folks. Just you wait to see what amazing people we've saved for our top 5.
Tell us, Alaska, who do we have in honourable, or should I say dishonourable, 5th place?
The one and only Kevin Spacey. He's possibly not actively a gatekeeper in the sense that many of the other people are on this list. However, his actions reaffirm gatekeeping and contribute significantly to the gatekeeping of other LGBTQ plus people. Therefore, we felt that he really earns this spot.
No Spacey defenders here.
Content warning for anyone who's going to be triggered by talks of abuse of sexual nature. Kevin Spacey is on this list because he chose to respond to sexual abuse allegations in which he was accused of traumatizing a fellow actor who was only 14 years old at the time. He was 26, by the way. At an after party in New York in 1986, he chose to respond to this by coming out as gay.
What the fuck, Kevin?
We're going to read the tweet to you. He said, "I have loved and had romantic encounters with men throughout my life, and I now choose to live as a gay man."
A Stonewall spokesperson had said that usually when celebrities come out, we're very quick to send out our congratulations and talk about the importance of role models. But for Kevin Spacey to choose this particular moment to come out is harmful to the LGBT community. His sexual orientation bears no relevance to the serious allegations he is facing. To conflate these things is extremely damaging.
I have to say, I thoroughly agree. I think conflating homosexuality with predatory behaviour and using his statements to focus on his own identity as a gay man instead of validating the survivor's experience wasn't just in very poor taste, but it also fuels a really dangerous myth about gay men and child abuse.
Obviously, this vicious lie has long proved useful in justifying the systematic persecution of gay and bisexual men. And this is the reason why that Spacey's statement is so utterly contemptible. You know, the potential consequences are dangerous to the LGBTQ plus community, a minority that he has publicly refused to associate with until he has been accused of assaulting an underage boy.
And this is what earns him his place on this list.
Oh, you dickhead, Kevin, you dickhead. I look forward to all the rat squeaks that you put in with me.
Who's worse than Kevin Spacey? Who's next on the list?
Caitlyn Jenner. Possibly the most visible and discussed transgender person ever. A self-professed trans advocate and a well-known anti-trans gatekeeper.
Her public coming out was an inspirational moment for many trans people who felt like just maybe the world was now an accepting enough place to welcome their transition too. Since then, she has gone on to act as a barrier to other people looking to transition. Recently, she was responsible for a slew of tweets in which she spoke out against the activism of a fellow trans woman who was Dylan Mulvaney.
For those of you unfamiliar with Dylan, she's a trans TikTok creator who found fame through her video series entitled Days of Girlhood, in which she chronicled her transition. She's been very open and visible, helping to start a lot of useful conversations. She's even met with the current president, Joe Biden, to discuss what the trans community actually needs to make their lives better.
Now, of course, Caitlyn, self-professed trans advocate, had something to say about this, went to Twitter and started up with some straight-up gatekeeping, saying, "Let's not normalise any of what this person is doing. This is absolute absurdity." She then quickly moved on to misgendering by saying he's talking about his penis. And then also commented on Dylan's pre-transition body by saying, Dylan, congrats, you're trans with a penis. Why she thought this was acceptable to say and how this makes her a trans advocate is beyond me.
Choosing to use your very public platform to smack down another trans person, ridiculous. And she's also known to have spoken out against same-sex marriage, allowing trans athletes to compete in sports, and obviously her continued defence of the Republican Party and the moral panic over trans issues that rage even harder today.
Honestly, there's so much that could be said that we simply don't have time to fit it all into this video. I think we just want to say that it's really disappointing to see the extent to which she has not understood why transitioning, including getting access to trans-affirming healthcare and the relative acceptance of her trans identity, was so easy for her compared to so many other trans people. And as an outspoken right-winger whose party is literally decimating trans rights, she is perhaps the most visible gatekeeper there is.
And that is why Caitlyn Jenner has our number 4 spot on terrible queer people who are gatekeeping for the rest of us.
Yet she has only made it to number 4, which means we have an absolutely cracking top 3 left for you. Can you guess who's in the top 3? Watch on to find out. Moving swiftly on to our top 3, and in spot number 3 we have, perhaps unsurprisingly, and a name that you've been expecting on this list, RuPaul Charles. The most iconic and celebrated drag queen in the world.
What? I never saw that coming.
Why could Ru be on this list? Let's find out, shall we?
RuPaul is credited with bringing drag to the mainstream, but he has also been criticised for creating division by focusing on cis-centric drag culture. Ru has said before, you can take performance-enhancing drugs and still be an athlete, just not in the Olympics. It kind of shocked millions, and it was used as a way to say that you can be transgender and a drag queen, just not on my bloody show.
I feel like a lot of people should just delete Twitter, because this is where they're going wrong, is airing their views through their tweets.
I was going to say, like, all these people, we've had to reference Twitter and all their stupid shit.
Do you remember when Ru tried to, like, tweet a picture of a trans flag and support the trans people and accidentally posted a train flag instead? I think it's safe to say that despite the mainstream success of RuPaul's Drag Race, it has had a woeful history when it comes to trans acceptance. The very first trans person to publicly come out on the show, Gia Gunn, was instantly painted as a villain and voted off almost immediately. And since Gia was a trans woman and not a gay man, the show clearly thought of her as not a true drag queen.
To add to this, in a now famous Guardian interview in 2018, Ru had even said that he probably wouldn't have admitted a transgender woman like Peppermint, who is an iconic New York City performer who has made the finals in season 9 after coming out as trans on the show, if she had already started gender-affirming surgery.
Essentially, Ru sees transitioning as cheating. He sees gender-affirming surgery as cheating. But Ru has literally crowned some gay, cis male drag queens on the show who've had surgery themselves. In fact, some of them have had more surgery than some of the trans people who have been on the show.
He also did say that drag loses its sense of danger and its sense of irony once it's not men doing it. Because at its core, it's a social statement and a big F you to male-dominated culture. The irony, of course, is that Ru's stance actually reinforces the continued male domination of culture. If cis men are the only ones permitted to participate in drag, then we're only allowing cis men a say in how patriarchy or misogyny gets deconstructed.
Helped to forward conversations about queer people in media, and then somehow became the barrier rather than the barrier breaker.
When RuPaul's Drag Race finally featured a trans contestant openly, only acceptable because they had completed a transition and because they were a man, leaving trans women still languishing off the TV screen.
And of course, this is only one form of gatekeeping that's perpetuated by Ru on RuPaul's Drag Race. It is the one we're focusing on today, but let's not forget some of the other fabulous moments that have been brought to us for this show, such as the aversion to gender fuckery, such as bearded queens, accusations of racism and the lack of diversity, and blatant classism. Who can forget the moment on British RuPaul's Drag Race where she started screaming "no fucking H&M" to people who literally had been in lockdown and couldn't afford anything else and were doing their best to put their drag out into the world. Even when the show tries at diversity, it seems to fail. Who can forget the moment that the first straight white man to be featured in the show claimed to be breaking the glass ceiling, whilst the cries for representation in the form of disabled people, non-binary people, drag kings, etc., go unheard?
We have talked about RuPaul's Drag Race ourselves as, drag nuns. We have touched on it before. So, if you would like to hear more about some of the problematic things we have felt about RuPaul's Drag Race, you should check out our video, episode 4, The Tea on Drag Race.
Essentially, what we're saying is that it boils down to this. The most famous drag queen has a show that has created a definition of drag that centers on men and patriarchal culture. And it utterly fails to recognize the origins of an art form that trans women pioneered. To quote trans athlete Alexandra Billings, "You did not invent drag. We did."
So sashay away, Ru. How can we top this?
I'll tell you how we can top this. We can top this with number 2 on our list. Milo Yiannopolis, an alt-right fascist political commentator. The best way to introduce Milo is probably to just read to you some of his own words. So here is how he introduced himself when speaking at one event. "When you invite me, you don't just come for the jokes about transgender people, who are, of course, all lovely and wonderful and totally well-adjusted, in absolutely no way completely fucking mad. The lefty is all of the things that you have been told it is. It is intolerant. It is profoundly hostile to free speech. Never stop laughing at these people. These people deserve to be laughed at. These people deserve to be ridiculed off their pedestals because they are preposterous." This is Milo. He makes his name from making politically incorrect shock speech. And he previously identified as gay.
Wow! How to make an introduction. He said that he only became gay to torment his mother, and now claims to have only leaned in to being gay in the past because a handsome, charismatic, intelligent gay man riotously celebrating conservative principles would drive liberals crazy. Basically, he did it for the lols.
He is a troll, and he revels in the experience of trolling other people. He's declared himself ex-gay. He says that he has cut his ties with the LGBTQ plus community. He also says that he's demoted his husband to housemate. He frequently makes defamatory comments and cruel jokes at the expense of other members of the LGBTQ plus community. And he puts his efforts into things like Pray the Gay Away events and opening new conversion therapy centres.
What a fucking peach.
It does make me wonder how his husband feels about the whole thing.
They're just roommates, darling.
Oh, they're roommates.
Some of his lovely examples of gatekeeping include, in 2011, Milo described being gay as a lifestyle choice guaranteed to bring gay people pain and unhappiness. In October 2017, he came out against the Australian marriage law postal survey, arguing it would violate religious freedom. This is the same month that he married his husband in Hawaii, however. August 2019, Milo was Grand Marshal for Straight Pride Parade in Boston. In response to his coming out as ex-gay, George Takei tweeted, "Far-right provocateur Milo Yiannopolis now claims to be ex-gay. As a gay man, I, for one, am exhaling a sigh of relief."
I love George Takei so much. Milo was handed a permanent ban by both Twitter and Facebook for breaking hate speech rules in 2019, which has ultimately forced him onto smaller conservative online platforms and has allegedly stripped him of his funds. Couldn't happen to a nicer person. Funniest thing that I found out from all my research that I did online of him was one interview where he genuinely claimed that dogs no longer bark at him now because he's ex-gay. He said that it's a sign from God.
Now, I know God spelled backwards is dog, but I'm still like 5 or 6 steps away from seeing the logic puzzle here.
It's worth saying that this self-appointed spokesperson for the modern far-right has seen his reputation spiral downwards due to his constant brushes with scandal and concerning remarks. He did find himself, for example, in hot water in 2017 when he appeared to advocate for relations with underage children. I'm not even joking. Big yuck.
Again, confused meme face.
So I think you can all agree that he is an absolute peach of a human being. But there is, in fact, one more on the list. That's right, there is something worse than Milo Yiannopolis.
We've waded through some terrible people, some misguided people, but we're here. Number 1, the worst gatekeeper of the queer community, and it's a special one. That's right. Number 1 place isn't necessarily just going to one particular individual. It's going to a whole goddamn organization.
Tell us, Sister Babeushka, who could be worse than all the others? Who is number 1 on our list?
You've already heard them before. That's right, it's the LGB Alliance, the British advocacy group founded in 2019 in opposition to the policies and LGBT rights charity Stonewall, all because of their positions on transgender issues. And its objective, as stated, asserting the rights of lesbians, bisexuals, and gay men to define themselves as same-sex attracted, and it states that such a right is threatened by attempts to introduce confusion between biological sex and the notion of gender.
They define themselves to be same-sex attracted. I thought they just included bisexual people in the list. See, there's the bi erasure.
There are a number of LGB groups that have actually formed internationally with similar objectives, and the LGB Alliance also promotes 16 of these on its websites on countries around the world, which, yeah, it's just sad to see that hate is spreading and is being supported by hate in other places as well.
Trans people exist. It's not something to be debated.
When it was granted charitable status by the Charity Commission for England and Wales in April 2021, LGBT groups had even signed open letters claiming that there isn't this division between LGB and T. You can be trans and bisexual, you can be trans and gay, you can be trans and lesbian. It is why it's sometimes described as an anti-trans or even a hate group by various people in the UK.
Just to give you some examples of some of the positions the LGB Alliance take, here's just a small selection. They oppose the ban on conversion therapy for trans people within the UK. They oppose gender-affirming care, including puberty blockers for children reporting gender dysphoria. One of the founders described gender identity as a lie and pseudoscience.
One of the other key things that LGB Alliance has done has been to be very vocal about the opposition to the Scottish gender recognition reform, which is to be based on self-identification.
I think the thing that is so worrying about them is the fact that they were granted charity status. They've been given a form of legitimacy. And as an organisation, they have more power because there are more people, more voices being pulled into that. And it's very harmful ideology. And it's hate on a terrifyingly large scale. And that is why they are number one most naughty on the naughty list of LGBTQ plus gatekeepers.
Never have I seen such an anti-LGBTQ plus organization that claims to be LGB friendly. There's an exorcism needed.
There are so many good people out there who do so many good things for the community to speak out about equality and further equal rights. So although this is a list of our top 10 gatekeepers, I will say that they are far outweighed by the many, many positive voices in the community. So not all hope is lost.
We wanted to do this episode because we wanted to specially name and shame those people that are actively damaging our community, and to remind people not to put up with this shit. And when this is happening, that we should be challenging this behaviour to actively push against and make sure that nobody is being given a platform to help exclude other people based on their gender, their sexuality, the age, the nationality, the religion, any characteristic.
I feel it's important for awareness. Although some of these people are very obviously gatekeeping, some of them come under the guise of people who are more accepting or kinder or more welcoming, the likes of Ellen. And so sometimes it can be difficult to see the damage that they're doing to other members of the community when it's not directly affecting you. But the damage is still there and still being done. So I feel, I don't normally like to name and shame, but I feel it's important for people to just be aware. But I think after such a serious topic, our next episode, we should do something that's far more fun and lighthearted. What do we have in store for next time, Sister Babeushka?
Next time, we're going back to our favourite topic.
I can't wait. What is it?
We're going to scavenge the internet once again for your questions about nuns.
And we are going to try and answer those questions for you. Last time, we learned all about flying nuns and nun farts. Who knows what we're going to discover next time? You'll have to tune in to find out.
Oh, nun farts. And we hope everyone that has watched or listened along has, if not enjoyed today's topic, at least found it educational and got something out of it. And please remember that we do have a whole bunch of other episodes that you can watch on our channel or listen to on podcast streaming.
So, with the conclusion of the list, we can say that we have done the thing.
We've done the thing!
We've done the thing!
We've done the thing! We've done the thing!
Done the thing!
The thing!
Done 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 the thing! Bye-bye!